Here, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. How are we doing? How we doing with the big dub? The big dub from Egypt, man. Hold on, let me get my other account up. Egypt into the round of 16, man. We love to see it. We love to see it. All right. Facing Messi, I don't know. Messi still gotta. Messi, he's still gotta. You know, you gotta be Cabo Verde, man. Let's see what's the score right now. Oh, FIFA. Oh, it's 1-0. Damn. Damn. And Messi's the one that got the goal. That's crazy. Oh, brother. Appreciate it. Jazakallah khair. Alright. Muslims, please wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow is Muslim Q&A. Please don't request right now. Thank you. Alright. We got the Egypt jersey on. I told y'all. Egypt wins, I bring the jersey out. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Okay, so I was gonna say, I believe only a true God will die for his creation, the
Sure.
world.
Before. So I'm guessing you're Christian, but whatever it is that
Yes,
you just
yes.
said. Okay. Why is that necessary?
Because scientifically,
Oh, only a
it's a
true
proof.
God. Only a true God will die for their creation.
Yes.
Did the Father die for you?
Did the Father die for who?
For you.
No.
Did the Holy Spirit die for you?
No, only
So
the
I guess
Son.
the Father is not a true God then, by that
No,
logic.
only Jesus is the true God.
So the
But
Father
but
is not the
there
true
are
God.
there are many gods. I admit.
Is the
But only
Father
the Jesus is the true God.
does Jesus say that the Father is the only true God?
Well, the Jews
Hey
believe
brother,
that
pay
Father is the
attention.
true.
Pay attention. I'm asking about what Jesus says in John 17:3. Does he say that the Father is the only true God?
Yes, but the
Okay,
moment he
good. Wait,
dies and
stop,
rises up
stop,
again,
stop, stop. Okay. The Father is the only true God. You said that only the true God will die for his creation. The Father did not die for his creation, therefore the Father is not the only true God according to you, yes?
no, that the Father is not the true God.
Wow. Thank you.
Because
Nice. He still wanna say because. Wow. Alright. Nice little good one right there. Let me take a note of that one. No, I gotta start keeping timestamps of everybody that comes up. Hello? Noble? Going
Hello?
once? Yeah. Can you hear me? Brother, you gotta speak. Okay. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Can you hear me fine?
I can hear you just fine. Are you Christian?
Yep.
Okay. What can I help you with today? What do you want to talk about?
I guess I can explain why I'm not a Muslim, if that's fine.
Sure, why are you not Muslim?
So, I'm Oriental Orthodox to be specific, right? And I read a lot of church father commentary. And I believe that the ancient Christians believe that Jesus is God. And that Islam doesn't align with that. Sorry, I was running outside.
Okay.
But yeah, yeah.
Alright. So, what's your evidence that the ancient Christians believe Jesus is God?
Well, I can read Justin Martyr right here. I have his book from the First and Second Apologies.
Okay. Did Justin Martyr believe Jesus is God in the same way you believe Jesus is God?
Yeah,
Really?
we
Justin
believe
Martyr was a
that.
subordinationist. Were you a subordinationist?
Well, it depends on how you define subordinationalist.
Meaning that the Father is the only true God and Jesus is a lesser God than the Father.
If you go by essence, sure, but he
So
is
he
most
doesn't
likely
believe
talking
what you
about rank.
believe. No,
Well, he does.
he's not only talking about rank. He says that Jesus is a lesser god.
Do you have a quote that says that,
I can pull
if
it
I
up
may
for you.
ask?
Yeah, one sec.
And is it specifically lesser in essence?
I
That's what I
got you.
want to know.
One second. One second. All right, here it is. One second. So this is on New Advent. Sorry, let me just make sure I know where it is. So he says, Justin, so Justin says in response to Trypho, so this is in his dialogue with Trypho, he says, I shall attempt to persuade you, since you have understood the scriptures of the truth of what I say, that there is, and that there is said to be another God and Lord subject to the maker of all things, who is also called an angel, because he announces to men whatsoever the maker of all things, above whom there is no other God, wishes to announce them. So, very clearly, he says there's another God and Lord, and prior to that, Trypho quotes him and says, and show us that the spirit of prophecy admits another God besides the maker of all things, taking care not to speak of the sun and moon, which is written, it is written, God has given to the nations to worship as gods, and oftentimes the prophets, employing this manner of speech, say that your God is a God of gods and a Lord of lords, adding frequently the great and strong and terrible God. For such expressions are used not as if they were really gods, but because the scripture is teaching us that the true God who made all things is Lord alone of those who are reputed gods and lords. And in order that the Holy Spirit may convince us of this, he said by the holy David, the gods of the nations, reputed the gods and are idols of demons and not gods, and he denounces a curse on them who worship them. To which he also responds and talks about the fact that there is another God and Lord later on. So,
Okay.
do you believe in two gods and lords?
No, I believe in one true God.
So, you don't believe what Justin Martyr believed?
But what I was asking is like,
No, you said,
can you pull up that
wait,
quote one more time?
I asked you, which ancient Christians believe what you believe, right? Or rather, you said that the ancient Christians believe Jesus is God, right? To which I asked you,
Yeah.
do they believe that in the same God that you believe in, or Jesus is the same God as you believe in? And you said, yes, Justin Martyr, right?
As an example, yes.
Okay, does Justin Martyr believe what you believe?
Okay, so my question to you was like, when we were reading through that, like, did he quote that he was lesser than the Father through
He
essence?
says that it's another God.
It's another God, but did he say he was lesser, though? That's the only thing
He
I'm
quite
thinking
literally says
behind.
another God. Okay, let's pull it up one more time. He says it's
Yeah, sorry, I
another
didn't
God and
read it.
Lord. Okay, he says another God and Lord subject to the maker of all things, meaning he is under him. Okay, if it's another one who is under the first, you don't believe that. You believe they're
Mm,
co-equal, co-eternal, correct?
correct, yes.
Okay, Justin Martyr doesn't believe that. This is known.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that to some degree he did like write in that language at that time. But I mean, my question then would be like, even if he was like writing in that language, like I still think that he believed that he was writing in the product of his time or something. But he still believed Jesus was divine to some degree, even if we go like in your way. So then how do you reconcile with that?
With what, sorry?
He still believed Jesus was divine. Um, how do you justify
Yeah,
that
but
then?
he's not the true God. That's the point. That's the problem. That's what you're trying to make the point of. Now you're shifting the point into, oh, well, he believes he was divine. Right. And we know why it's the case that they would believe he's divine based off of, the way that John in his gospel makes or portrays Jesus to be. But if we were to actually go based off of the things Jesus himself says, we don't actually find indication of that.
What did Jesus say exactly? Like that doesn't make him God.
The fact that he doesn't say anything to portray the idea of him being God.
Well, he
That's
says
enough
things like, I
evidence.
and the Father are one, though.
Right, one in purpose, because the context of that particular passage, he says, is in regards to people having eternal life and being saved. He says, "My Father who has given them to me is greater than all. I and the Father are one." So even within that passage, it still doesn't help you.
Hmm. Can we pull up like Catena to like read like the what the early church thought? Because like
Do
for
you
us,
have a
like the
specific
issue,
reference that you want to go through?
yeah, John 10:30.
No, I
If
mean,
you can
is there
pull
a
up,
specific church father that you're referring to, or are we just going on like a goose chase right now to see?
I mean, like I can't interpret things outside of the church, you know, like
All right.
that's
Well, the earliest thing we have here is from 250, Alexander of Alexandria, and then 258, Cyprian of Carthage. This isn't even that early, brother. This is fairly late. You have Tertullian, and Tertullian doesn't believe what you believe about Jesus either. So he's
but that
also a
doesn't mean we
subordinationist.
disregard his writings, though.
He's also a subordinationist, though. So he's going to say the same thing or something to the extent or akin to what Justin Martyr was saying. If you want to read it, we could read it. It says, "And
Sure.
I and my Father are one, and never separate from the Father or other than the Father, since I and the Father are one. So in the Gospel they simply keep in view the Lord's answer to Philip, I and my Father are one, even in the same in which it was said in a previous passage, I and my Father are one. As it is said, I and my Father are one. That appellation is one both of filial duty and of power. Again, in the Father, the Son is invoked, for I saith he, he and the Father are one." Nothing to indicate that they are one in essence, nothing of the sort. We could go to the other ones. "But of those words which signifies natural glory and nobility, and abiding with the Father, they have become unmindful, such as this, I and my Father are one, and I and my Father are one." Nothing crazy being said. Here, he very clearly says it's about authority, suggesting to us a unity that comes from divine authority, lays it down saying, I and my Father are one. He who breaks the peace and the concord of Christ is so in opposition to Christ. He who gathereth elsewhere than in the church scatters the church of Christ. The Lord says, I and the Father are one. Nothing to indicate this. And all of this is not very early. This is rather late, if anything. This is about 3 centuries later.
I mean, sure. I mean, that's nothing you can do about that there. But like they say things like glory and nobility, right? Like, why would you associate that
Yeah,
with
but you
God?
said early Christians. These people are not early.
They are early. They're
3
well,
centuries later is early?
that is pretty early, yes.
Brother, when you say early, I'm thinking 1st century, 2nd century, latest.
Okay, then do you want to go through Saint Ignatius and Saint Polycarp then?
Do they have any backing for what they're saying?
Well, if you read
Because
through Saint Ignatius's letters, like he goes through the issues with early Docetists and Judaizers, but he still in his letters he talks about how Jesus is God.
okay, you know what? Let me actually show you this. Hold on. Let me show you what Tertullian says.
What about Saint Ignatius?
I
I mean,
got you.
if you
1
wanted a
second.
first
No,
century
because I'm gonna
Christian.
show you. I'm gonna show you the fact that even during Tertullian's time in the 3rd century, he says that the majority of believers didn't believe in the Trinity, and they found it to be
Yeah,
deeply
that's
confusing.
not a hidden thing. Like a lot of there's a lot of heresy going on. Like
No.
even the
Okay, but
Arians.
who's to say that this is heresy as opposed to listening to what the majority actually believes? Why would the majority be the one that's under heresy and not the minority?
Well, just because you're like the biggest, that doesn't mean you're correct. I mean, Saint Athanasius
Okay,
said,
but there's
"The
nothing
world
to
is against me;
indicate.
I am against the world."
Okay, but there's nothing to indicate that the smaller group is also the one which is correct. It's just 2 groups going against each other.
Hmm.
Or rather,
Okay, I
multiple
mean,
groups going against the one small group. Right. Uh,
okay, sure. I mean, let's see what you pull up.
Alright, 1 second. Let me just see where he said it. I think it's in chapter 3. So he says, "The simple, indeed I will not call them unwise and unlearned, who always constitute the majority of believers, are startled at the dispensation of the 3 in 1, on the ground that their very rule of faith withdraws them from the world's plurality of gods to the one only true God, not understanding that although he is the one only God, he must yet be believed in with his own," I don't know what this Greek word is, but he makes it very clear that the majority of people at his time period, which is about 3 centuries later, still didn't believe in a Trinity. Meaning it was not something which was well established and a well taken belief to begin with.
Yeah, which is why we have the Council of Nicaea, which sets down the doctrine. I
Right, a
mean,
bunch
like,
of people who agree with each other saying, hey, either believe this or we're going to unalive you. That's a great way to convince people.
hmm. I don't know too much about the history with the unaliving. I still got to study that in all honesty.
It's
But
very clear that they unalived heretics. Many of the church fathers comment on the fact that if there's a heretic, he should be unalived, including people such as
yeah,
just what's his name, Thomas Aquinas.
Thomas Aquinas is a Catholic saint. We don't really, I mean, at least to us, like we don't really hold him to anything.
What are you, you're oh
Uh,
you're Oriental, you said, okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Right, but I mean it's not something that the Orientalists shy away from either. Like this is very clear within early Christian history that the fathers of the church and saints and so on, you know, they allowed for the unaliving of heretics. Like the statement "burn the heretic" comes from the church.
I do have to look into that honestly. Like, I haven't read too much about that. But so you pulled up that quote from Tertullian, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, like I understand that there wasn't a set doctrine at the time, meaning like there was fights going on, and the majority at that time were not like Trinitarian. I understand that, but
But they not only were they not Trinitarian, they also were not Trinitarians in the way that you believe in the Trinity either. There were subordinationists or Arians or, other things amongst that, but they were not, co-equal, co-eternal type of Trinitarians.
okay. Um, so then like if so like even though like what do you call it, they weren't like you're saying, I agree with you, like most of them weren't believing in like the co-equal co-eternal stuff, like I understand, but I guess like then again, like even from like the first century to like the fourth century, right? I guess like even if you want to argue that like they weren't Trinitarian the way that we believe in it such as today, like they still believe that Jesus was divine to some degree, even though they may have been wrong. But like, how does that like how do you justify like all those first century writings all the way to like the fourth century when they're not in line with like Islam? Like we have those writings, if that makes
I
sense.
don't, I don't
Sorry for
claim
my.
that they are in line with Islam. My whole issue would just simply be, why should I take any of these people to be saying the truth? It's
I
not
mean, they
something that
lived.
Jesus himself is saying.
I mean, if you go to Saint Ignatius and Saint Polycarp, for example, right?
Neither of them have a chain back to Jesus. The only way
They
that they try to
the tradition holds
establish
that they studied under the
from John,
Apostle John,
but
though.
there's no evidence for that. That's the problem.
That is a fair point. I'll give you that. But then, like, what constitutes as evidence if you wanted
To
like
say
evidence,
that
for
this is,
example?
for example, one of them would say, this was my teacher, we would expect that John would have mentioned Polycarp in some way, shape, or form and said, this is my student. Something akin to that, right? He would have mentioned him, or the other one would have mentioned him as well. But neither of the two of them mentions each other. The only vague statement that's made is Polycarp, quotes something from what presumably would have been the Gospel of John, if I'm not mistaken, or one of the writings of John, yet he doesn't even quote it in the same way. So it doesn't even match what we actually see within that text that was supposedly attributed to John. So it's not an indication that he was a student or anything of the sort, just simply that he would have interacted with a text that looks similar to what he wrote.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like we don't have like the whole entire chain where it's like, oh, this person wrote this, like
Yeah.
until like much later. Like I'll agree with that. But like theologically, they do align to some degree. But I don't know. Like maybe we can agree to disagree
Some
for
of them,
now.
some of
But
them may align with each other, but they don't align with what Jesus' teachings are. Okay. We don't find any indication based off of, let me put it for you this way, right? If I could produce an explanation to the sayings of Jesus for every verse that you try to bring, for example, like the one that you brought, John 10:30. Okay. If I could produce an explanation such that it would match with regards to the theology that we would actually expect to find within the within first century Judaism, right? Then it would follow that my argument is going to take precedence over whatever type of doctrine that you're trying to portray that differs from that which first century Jews would have believed in, right? First century Jews never believed in a Trinity, or even prior to that, right?
how about the Old Testament verses that well, the first century Jews, like don't they become like rabbinic Jews? Uh
I'm saying even
like
prior to the first century, you don't find any indication of Jews believing in a triune God. Okay. And to make it even worse, in Deuteronomy chapter 13, it says that if the Jews are approached by an individual who tries to call them to a God that they and their ancestors did not know of, that they should unalive this person. They should stone him and unalive him. Right? Obviously, the Jews and their ancestors didn't know about a triune God, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So they should have
um,
unalived Jesus if it was actually the case that he was preaching that, right? Based
but
off
what
of what the
about
Bible says.
verses like Genesis
Just
1:26, for
just one
example?
second, one second. Do you understand what I just said?
Yeah, I understand what you said.
Okay. They have interpretations for Genesis 1:26, Genesis 3:14, all of these verses that you try to bring to try and bring up this idea of some sort of triune God in the Old Testament. They never understood it that way, correct?
Could you show me like the interpretations?
Yeah, of course
Like,
I can.
I mean, like,
I'll show
if
you
we're
for
talking
Genesis
about first century
1:26.
Judaism,
I got
that's
you.
much different. Yeah,
I
but
got
like,
you.
okay,
The way that they understand Genesis 1 is that they say this is in regards to a council. One second. It's not referring to multiple persons. One sec. Let me get you
and
the
just to
verse.
clarify, is this like pre first century Judaism or is this like rabbinic? What we're
Well,
talking
it would
about?
be rabbinic, but the whole point would be is that the burden of proof would be upon you to substantiate the idea that they did believe in this, to which we have absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. What we do have evidence of is that even today, the tradition that the Jews carry, which they do actually hold to this tradition for a very long time, it's not just rabbinic Judaism or anything of the sort, is that they say that they didn't ever believe this. They only believed in, a unipersonal God. That's all that they ever knew. One sec. Let me see. And at most, what you would find is in the first century, there were individuals who believed in a two powers in heaven. But that's still not a trinity, and it was not a majority belief. It was a heretical group. It was a very, very small group. Let me see. Where's the verse? Ah. All right. So this is a Jewish website called Sepharia. And this is the verse. God
What's the
created human...
website called?
Sepharia. Sefaria.
RIA. Okay, got it.
And then we could go to the commentary that they have. We'll go to the English ones just to make it easy for us. So Rashi says,
Sorry, I'm new to this website. Are you you're at the Tanakh, right? The Torah?
yeah, just click Genesis and then go to, it's verse 27 here. So the numbering is a little bit different for the Jews.
All right, yeah, I see it.
Okay, and when you click it, it'll bring up like a sidebar on the side, and it'll show you like, let me show you again. It'll say like resources over here, and you scroll down, and it says commentary. Okay, and then you click all commentary. You could go to the English one, Rashi.
Resources, and then you said scroll down and go to commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it'll tell you different commentaries. Click the one that says Rashi. It's on the screen, by the way, too, so you could read it here
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
I'm reading
So it says,
it.
so God created the man in his image in the type that was... Oh, wait, hold on. Is it this verse? Oh, sorry, it's verse 26. It is verse 26. Okay. So he says, we will make man, the meekness of the Holy One, blessed be he. They, the rabbis, learn from here, because the man is in the likeness of the angels, and they might envy him, therefore he took counsel with them. So what they understand is that God did this in the council of the angels, so that the angels would not become jealous. And then the verse right after that says, and God created humankind in the divine image, in his own likeness, right? In his, is what it says many times. And you can see this in the biblical one as well. Look. Verse 27, it says, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them.
What Bible translation are you referring to?
This is NIV.
Sorry.
We could go to anyone.
I could do NKJV. I read the Septuagint. They don't really have that. I'm
Okay.
not gonna lie to you.
Septuagint is here on this website as well. Hold
Okay.
on. Well, it's the ABP, but it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at NKJV, and like it goes down to the plural us that they
That's
refer
verse
to.
26, yeah. Verse 27, though, it says, God made man according to the image of God, he made him. So it's in the singular here for the Septuagint. He made him. Male and female, he made them. It goes into the singular. And I believe the Hebrew is the same way as well for verse 27. Let me get a...
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to follow along too.
No worries. So this is the Hebrew, verse 27. It says, and created God the man in his image. Okay. In the image of God, he created them. He created him, male and female, he created them. So, the point being is that we don't find any interpretation or any indication that these individuals believed in a multi-personal God prior to what we have of Christianity afterwards. You understand?
Sure.
Right. So if they don't have that understanding, then Jesus, according to Christians, would have been teaching them a God that they did not know. Okay. If that's the case, then they would have actually been justified in trying to unalive him, according to what God tells them in the Old Testament. I can pull up that verse for you as well. It's in Deuteronomy 13.
Deuteronomy 13. I have it as well.
I believe
Okay,
it's
I
around
mean,
verse 6 or 7. Oh,
so
it's-
I mean, like, even if you like, I'm reading with this with you like along. Sorry, my words are messed up. Um, what do you call it? You have like the Septuagint though, which is much older than the Masoretic, right? Like, would you say that the Rabbinic Bible that you're using comes from the Masoretic as well?
Well, yeah, to an extent, obviously they use the Hebrew because they say that it was heretical to begin with to try and do it with the Greek because, they say that their sages that did that were wrong in doing so, and so on. So they rely on other things, but they don't only have the Masoretic. I know that the Masoretic is usually what's, predominantly right now, but we have other texts like the Dead Sea Scrolls, they have the Samaritan text, and so on. So we don't only have the Greek Septuagint. And all
Okay.
three of those come around the same time period as each other.
Yeah, I mean, I know the early like Septuagint comes like pretty like I think like in the early centuries, and then the Masoretic
Third
comes
century
like around the
BCE. Yeah, so Greek
seventh.
Septuagint is third century BCE. Dead Sea Scrolls are between third and first century BCE, and the Samaritan actually they believe dates before the fourth century BCE, but we don't have manuscripts that come until later, which is around I think the second or first century BCE. But all three of them are within like the same time frame essentially.
Okay. Yeah, I'm reading on the screen as well. Like
Yeah,
I do have to like research a lot more. I just had genuine questions.
yeah, no worries, man. If you wanna talk about anything else, by all means we could do that, or I can move on to the next person if you'd like. Yeah, you
I
could come back
mean,
when you're, you know.
yeah, I mean, I definitely do have to study up on like the rabbinic Judaism commentary,
Hmm.
but like at least to me, like my issue, like if I ever come back up here again, I'm pretty sure I could find you, but
Yeah.
if I were to like come up here again, like obviously I brought up that the church fathers, like they did believe that even like Justin Martyr and all the church fathers I brought up, right? They
Hmm.
weren't like Trinitarian in the way that the Council of Nicaea defined it, because like at least the way that I've like heard it explained to me was like they didn't have a lot of resources back then, and it wasn't as set and defined. They were still in the mainstream church to what it was in line with Nicaea, blah blah blah. They still believed that Jesus had divinity to some degree, even to Saint Ignatius, who, I mean, I guess you'll disagree with me on this. Studied under the Apostle John, and then we talked about like the Jewish commentary, and I kind of pointed out that this is Rabbinic Judaism, which comes in the first century ish,
Right,
which is a
but
little
you're
bit
missing my point a little bit. Irrespective of the commentaries, irrespective of what early Christians believed, okay? What we want to know is whether or not Christianity is in continuity with the prior prophets and the prior
right.
beliefs of the people, right?
That is a big thing, yes.
Right. If it's the case that it's not, okay, then those Jews within the first century that tried to unalive Jesus, because according to your claim, it's Jesus was the one who was teaching these things. If it's the case that's not in line with what they believed, and we don't find evidence for this being something that they believed in prior, then it would be the case that they were justified in trying to unalive him, which is obviously bizarre and crazy to say, right?
Yeah, I mean, if your point is correct, yes. For now, like I'll definitely agree to disagree,
Right. So
but
your job more so would not be to research these early Christians. It would not even be to research rabbinic Judaism. Okay. It would be to find whether it's the case that there was early Jews prior to the first century that would have held to a belief of a multi-personal God. Obviously, I already gave you the example of one particular group, which was a very small faction that came pretty close to the first century, right? Which was the two powers in heaven. And even then, they still don't believe in this conception of a Trinitarian God or anything of the sort. You understand?
sure.
Right. So that's what you would want to look into, is whether or not these individuals, the majority belief between them was if they, held to an idea of a multi-personal God.
Yeah, I'm looking at the overview. I just Googled it. It was an ancient Second Temple and early rabbinic Jewish belief. So I'll definitely look into that. But apart from that, I mean, that's pretty much all I had today. If I ever come back on here, I guess we could talk about the two powers.
Of course,
If
man.
I, yeah.
Of course.
I mean, but for now, I guess we agree to disagree.
No problem, man. Have a good night.
You too.
Yep. Good convo. I'm trying to keep timestamps now, guys. I need to keep timestamps for my editors. 260, 2640. Sorry. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. Let me get the next person. Guys, please, if you are Muslim, don't request right now. Yo, imagine Capo Verde kicks out Argentina, man. Hello?
What? I'm listening to the phone.
Sorry?
You guys sit down, take a break. Come on.
Hello? Bijarju? Alright, I think he's busy.
Hello.
Yeah, what's up?
The Spider-Man guy. I'm trying to back him as well. He was talking about Christianity getting killed by Muslims, something like that.
No,
something.
he wasn't.
Well, if you look up the guy called D.
Hello? Male? Okay, goodbye. Alright, any non-Muslims? I'm gonna just clear up this request box real quick. Okay. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Do you mind if I ask you some questions about Islam?
Sure, before you do that, can you just tell me what you believe in?
Yeah, sure. I'm an agnostic. I'm currently, looking for the truth. I'm a seeker.
You're a Sikh or agnostic?
Yes.
Which one?
No, I'm not a seeker. I said I'm a seeker. I'm
Oh, a
seeking the
seeker.
truth.
Sorry. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your question?
Yeah. So Itachi, would you say that you're 100% certain that Islam is the truth, or would you say it's more of a probability, like you're around 75% certain? Would
Yeah,
you assign
it's gonna be based off probability, but I wouldn't assign a specific number. I would just say that it's more likely than any other belief system.
Okay, got it. So you would you would say something like atheism is still possible, that God doesn't exist.
No, I don't think atheism is possible. I don't think that's... Well, atheism isn't even a belief to begin with. All it's saying is that there is no God. So if you're saying the belief that there is no God is, possible, I would say no. Because there is sufficient evidence for us to be able to come to the conclusion that there is a necessary existence.
Sure, but by atheism, by what I mean by atheism, Itachi, I mean that necessary existence is not a conscious being, that it was just matter.
Yes,
Do you
I'd say
think that
that
that's possible?
it's very, very unlikely, like highly unlikely. Plus, matter wouldn't even be able to
Okay.
be something that would be necessary by definition.
May I ask why?
Because it's contingent and it changes. If it changes, so if something changes, that means that there must be something, or essentially changes rather, there must be some sort of external explanation in order to be able to explain this change that it underwent. You understand?
I think so. I is that like a fundamental property of matter? Like,
That
is
matter
the
changes essentially. Yeah. And plus,
yes,
even as it pertains to the Big Bang, what we know is that matter itself did not exist until, or sorry, the singularity. Matter didn't exist within the singularity, right? It only came about afterwards. There was only
matter did.
heat and
Yes,
energy.
that's
So then it can't be necessary if it wasn't even
yes.
there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not too like familiar with the specifics of the Big Bang. But I have heard something similar. But from my but like when you ask these atheist folks how they explain that, what the answer which I've usually heard is that they refer to something like a cyclic universe, where they believe that
Yeah, it expands
this
and then
the Big Bang
collapses.
is something that is something like that. I don't know the specifics, but I have heard explanations where matter is where I think they refer to matter as something like infinite.
No, that's not true, because what
It
we
has
know based
existed.
off of science today, it says matter as we know it, such as atoms and subatomic particles, did not exist in the initial singularity. Instead, the singularity was in an unimaginably dense, hot state composed entirely of pure, highly concentrated energy. Matter formed much later as the universe expanded and cooled. So there was no matter. If it wasn't there, then it can't be that which is necessary, because that which is necessary, by definition, must always be there.
Yeah, but Itachi, as far as I understand, that's for this specific Big Bang, right? Like the big, like the
Yeah, but if it wasn't
there could
even
have been
there
a
during.
previous Big Bang before
Okay, but
this.
if there wasn't anything there during ours, it can't be necessary. Okay. Something, when we say something is necessary, it means that it's fundamental for the
Okay.
existence of all other things. Okay. If it's the case it ceases to exist, it cannot be necessary. You understand?
Right.
That's within the definition of
Yeah, I do.
necessary.
I guess the kind of the
Look,
the yes.
right. The general meaning is that it's required or essential, something you must have or do to fulfill a condition, i.e., water is necessary for life, or he lacks the necessary skills. Necessary describes something absolutely essential, required to achieve a goal, or inescapable by nature. If it's the case that there was things that were in existence without matter being there, then matter cannot be necessary, right?
Yes, I think so. I'm sorry, Tati.
Okay.
I'm not too familiar with like the science specifics. I just watch a lot of debates and stuff like that. So I'm not.
Yeah, well, a lot of
Uh,
these people that debate don't actually know what they're talking about either, so you're not alone.
yeah, Itachi, if you don't mind me asking, how did you become like so knowledgeable about like different religions and stuff? Are you self-taught, or
For the most
did
part,
you
self-taught, yeah. But I've taken a few classes here and there as well.
okay, is there anything like you would recommend to us? Because I too, like, how do you have such a broad understanding of Christianity, of Islam, of you know?
Well, I mean, I've been studying for like over 6 years now, so that could be part of it for sure. Um, it's just a matter of how
Okay.
much dedication you put into trying to learn and everything. There's many good lectures and debates that you could watch that are very informed, as opposed to like brain rot lectures and brain rot debates. So
Yeah, Itachi, because like the problem that I have is like even if I feel like when will I know that I have stumbled across an argument for a particular religion that isn't debunkable. For example, I used to think that the argument for Jesus as for Christianity, the argument about why would the apostles die for a lie, I used to think that that was a pretty good argument, and then I almost considered converting to Christianity, but then after thinking about it for a couple of weeks, then I realized there were some holes in it. So what if
right.
I convert and then I realize, that I
Well,
was in the
the problem isn't about you converting and then later finding something that's wrong. Okay. The problem
yeah.
is what is the evidence that the religion itself posits in order to say that this is something which is internally coherent, as well as the fact that it's reflective of what we observe in reality. And then on top of that, is it the more probable explanation? Because somebody could sit here today, right, and construct a very, very logical belief, okay? It can consort to reality and everything of the sort, but they don't have any actual evidences to suggest the idea that we should be adhering to this as opposed to adhering to another religion that is also equally logical and equally coherent, but the other religion has, another set of evidence which would be like prophecies and such to indicate the idea that it's coming from some sort of supernatural being. You understand? So there's many different
Yeah, I
facets that
do.
are going to come into play. So we want to look at what the religion itself says, not what other people say or what other people did in response to the religion. Because in that same way, for example, that you brought about the martyrs of Christianity, let's say that that's true, okay? Are those martyrs the only people who died for the sake of their religion? Or is there other religions that people also died for the sake of their beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So it's not something to do
Yeah.
with the religion itself. We want to look at what the religion itself actually posits to being true.
Yeah, and I actually heard you yourself address this argument, Itachi, and your point was even if they did die, how do we know that what they died for was the same message that was being
Exactly, that
preached
as
today?
well.
They could have,
Right.
yeah. So that's what kind of that was kind of the biggest hole in that, because just they could have been dying for another message. They
Right.
could have been dying for Christianity that was like Islam.
Right.
Yeah. Itachi, I really do need to study more about the specifics of different religions to be able to have a substantial conversation with you about that. Do you mind if I ask you something specific about Islam that has been troubling me?
Go ahead, yeah.
It's more about how you practice the religion.
How do we practice the religion? That's the question, or you
Yeah,
have a question?
specifically to do with the intentions.
Okay.
So, Itachi, I was watching a specific Muslim YouTuber, and because it's a hobby of mine. I really like consuming religious content, and he spoke about a particular hadith relevant to intentions. Basically, what he said was that if you don't have the right intention when you do a specific thing, which is to please God, it might actually be worse.
Right. Yeah.
Doing the good action. I think he spoke about
It's a
a
concept.
scholar or
It's called
somebody like that.
it would be something called riya. Riya is like doing something with the intention of showing off as opposed to doing it for the proper intention. Yeah. And this would be considered, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's considered a major sin, or maybe
Exactly. I
minor
think
sin. But yeah.
he used a really scary example. I think the example he used was a man who, like, he was very steadfast. He used to pray regularly and things of that nature. And have you heard of this hadith? I think that then he overheard some people in the church or the mosque saying, "Hey, look at that guy. He's always." He always prays this particular prayer on time or something like that, and then he came and boasted even further, and because of that, all of the good that he accumulated was cancelled or something like that.
Right.
Is that a true hadith, Itachi, or
Well, I
is
don't
there
know about
something? Have you
this.
heard something?
It's not about this specific. I don't know about this specific hadith in particular, but generally speaking, we know about the fact that our intentions are being weighed. Ultimately, it's not just the action itself, because there's a
Yeah.
hadith from the Prophet, peace be upon him, which is authentic, where he says, "Innamal a'malu binniyat." He says, indeed, the actions are weighed based off of the intentions. So our intention is going to be the most important part throughout the entirety of our lives.
Yeah, exactly. So Itachi, you would agree with that sentiment that sometimes doing the right action, if you do it with the wrong intention, for example, maybe impressing others or something like that, can actually be worse than not doing it.
It can be, yeah.
Like, yeah. So that's that. Itachi, my problem stems from a question that one of my friends asked me. He basically asked me, even if you become convinced in Christianity or Islam or another religion, would you be following the dictates of that religion because you want to go to heaven, or because you want to please God? Like, let's say that there was no heaven and God just told you to do these commands, would you do them? And I thought about it for a little while, and the conclusion that I came to was, if there was no heaven, even if God asked me to do these particular things, I'm not 100% certain that I would do them.
Yeah, but that's only in the case of a hypothetical that doesn't exist, right?
Yes.
We in Islam, we're motivated because of both reasons. Okay. We're motivated in the sense that Allah, He promises that if you do the correct things, He also gives you a proper reward for it, right? Because He's considered to be the most just. Okay, so naturally the one who's most just is going to be giving an equitable reward based off of what it is that you do. And the best part about it is that even within the Quran, for those who are wrongdoers as well, it also talks about what they receive as being a reward as well. Okay, it's a reward that's equitable to what it is that they commit. You understand? So somebody who does
Yes.
wrong things, he says, and give them tidings of their reward of a painful experience. For example, the Quran will say. You understand?
Yes, Itachi, slight tangent. You spoke about you spoke about what a person receives being suitable to their crime or something like that. Itachi, if I'm not mistaken, that the Prophet had an uncle who rejected the religion, right? Because he didn't want to like insult his society or something like that.
Well, he had
He
multiple.
didn't
He had
want.
multiple uncles who rejected. Yeah.
But this I think that the hadith or something like that is that this particular uncle is in a hell so because he helped the prophet a lot. He's in a relatively
Right. There's
relative
different levels. Yeah. So he's in
yeah and but
the
where the
lightest, quote
fire
unquote,
is
one. Yeah.
up to his heel or something like that, but it's still so hot that but it's still like apparently it's enough to melt his brain or something. I'm not sure if is that a real thing.
I don't know about the details, but I do know about the fact that he's in the first level. Yeah.
Okay, so Itachi, but this particular uncle, was he somebody who knew that Islam was true, or was he uncertain about it?
He knew that it was true, but he didn't
Do
want
we
to
know?
come. He didn't want to. Sorry. He didn't want to. He didn't want to become a Muslim because of the way that the society like would have looked at it and stuff, and the way that he was looking at it in comparison to society as well. Due to the fact that obviously, they didn't like the idea of a elder listening to the one who is younger, right? So he ends up not accepting Islam because accepting Islam means submitting your will to the one true God. Okay, even though it's the case that he had what's it called? That he had helped the Prophet, peace be upon him. He did not do the things that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was actually, instructed towards bringing the people to do. Right? Like, for example, taking the Shahada. That's the first and foremost thing that you would need to do in order to be considered a Muslim. You understand?
Yes, yes,
Right. So he wouldn't be considered a Muslim. Even though he could have believed in it. Obviously, we don't know what specifically he believed in his heart. There are some narrations I've seen
yeah.
that say that he did believe, but he didn't want to accept due to the arrogance that he had and pride.
Okay. Oh man, I mean, don't you think that was really like illogical of him? I mean,
Of course.
to sacrifice his.
There's a lot of people that are like that, though, even today. There's a lot of people who recognize Islam as being true, but because they have, ulterior motives, they'll instead go against Islam and they'll fight against it and stuff like that too, not recognizing that this life is going to be something which is temporary, right? It's actually more common than you would think. People do a lot for money and for power and status and so on.
Yep. I mean, like people do silly things and go to jail, right? Even though they know that. Yeah. But thanks. Sorry for the tangent, Itachi. But in regards to the question I asked about intentions, what would you say not to think about it? Would you say like how would you respond to something like that?
Well, we always have to try to rectify our intentions when we do anything. So before I do something, like before, for example, coming on live, right? I ask Allah that He rectify my intentions and keep my intentions pure and only and solely for His sake, as opposed to, me seeking fame or showing off or anything of the sort, right? It's all just a matter of perspective
Yes.
and trying to just keep on, on that straight path and having God in mind and being God-fearing. You understand?
But what about the intention of wanting wanting heaven or blessings in this life, like
That's not an issue.
aid from God?
That's you could still want those things. Those aren't bad things to want, right? If I do the things that please Allah, He is going to reward me with XYZ thing. This is something that He promises us in the Quran anyway, right? You're still doing it for the
Yes.
right intention. You're doing it for the sake of pleasing God, right? But you also know that there's a caveat where he promises that you would receive XYZ things as well, to which there's no issue with that.
Yeah, that's kind of the conundrum that I'm in, Itachi, is that I don't know, like I don't really know how to check what my true intention is. Am I doing it?
It's
How
not
do
it's
like
not
how do I
something
know?
that you could check right now. You yourself and I myself wouldn't even know to the fullest extent what our intentions are, because there could still be some sort of lingering feeling and whatnot up towards one thing. But the ultimate thing is that we can know for like a basic amount, right, why I'm doing
Yes.
XYZ act, right? So as long as
Oh,
we
yeah,
know that, that's fine, right?
yeah, and Itachi, by the way, this individual who believes that uh, Prophet Muhammad is the final prophet and believes in Allah, but has incorrect intentions. Let's say more often than not 100% of the time, but more often than not. Uh, would he be somebody who is in hell forever, or would he just be punished for a limited amount of time and then enter
So
heaven?
the Prophet, peace be upon
Would
him,
he-
in an authentic hadith, he talks about the Muslim that has the least amount of faith in them. Even they are going to eventually end up in paradise. So it could be the case that somebody will end up for a small period of time in hellfire to expiate the badness of whatever it is that they did in this life, and then later on enter into paradise as well. So that's more so something that only God can weigh out in the judgment day, not with not me and you. We can't weigh that out. Like, we can't sit there and like keep record of every single little thing that we do, or anybody else.
Okay, got it. But Itachi, like, do we have any degree of? We know that we won't. We know that we can't say if we'll be going to hell for a limited amount of time. But will we be able to? Is there a way in Islam of knowing that we will eventually go to heaven? Or
Yes, like I said, the
have,
Prophet, peace be upon him, he says in an authentic hadith that paradise is a necessity for every single Muslim who has even the smallest amount of faith.
okay, so if we are, if we do believe in the one God and that Prophet Muhammad is the prophet, can we kind of
Yeah, but belief is not just saying.
pacify ourselves knowing? Yes.
Yeah, because belief is not just statements, right? Belief is also seen with regards to actions. I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
there's like certain actions that we must perform, either whether it be on a daily basis or a yearly basis or a once in a lifetime basis, like for example taking
Fasting,
the shahada,
Hajj.
fasting, hajj, exactly. The 5 pillars of Islam. Those are things that are of a necessity. If you don't have the 5 pillars, then you can't actually be considered a quote unquote Muslim if you lose them. You understand?
Yep, I do. But I mean, like, assuming that we do those as well. The only other factor here is that our intentions are not always 100% pure. Like sometimes they
Right.
might be for
Nobody's going to be
praise,
able to
fame.
have that. We work hard towards having the proper intention all the time, but nobody's going to be 100% of the time. Some people will like
Got
something
it.
could creep into the person, but obviously Allah, being just, being merciful, He understands that we're still doing it for the sake of the proper reasons the majority of the time and such. That's all something that Allah Himself is going to weigh out.
Got it. Itachi, thank you so much, Itachi. Before I go, do you have any advice, like, for the rest of us about how to become more educated about arguments for God and things of that nature? Like, are there any courses which you would recommend, or
Oh, well, I
or
don't really take courses to learn stuff like that. It's more of just like, random research that I did over the years and, continue to do. You could start looking into like things on YouTube, like philosophy of religion and stuff like that. There's like a lot of playlist courses and stuff for things of that
yeah,
nature.
yeah, Itachi, it's like, do you need to take a course in philosophy, a course in
No, you don't need to.
logic,
You don't need to. All the information's already online anyway. Like I said, like there's YouTube playlists. Like I could search one now. I think I listened to it a long time ago. I don't know if it'll show up still. One sec.
Oh, yeah. Itachi, I had one, like, what would you say to somebody of another religion who says that they believe because of faith, because of some sort of personal experience that they've had. Like I think that Christians call it the witness of the Holy Spirit. Like suddenly they feel they feel some sort of compulsion that Christianity is true, but they don't really have any arguments for it.
Well,
Like I just really believe that.
I try to talk to them and get them to understand why evidence and arguments are important. Because a lot of the time they'll come with like emotional things, for example. Yeah, look, this is just an example of something that you could find. Obviously, you could go with whichever one specifically you would like. This is going to be an introduction one. This is like an actual online course that's on here. It has 31 videos in the playlist. This one has 22, 17, I think, or 21. Sorry. There's a bunch of different videos that you could watch. But yeah.
Oh yeah, and but Itachi, if I'm not mistaken, isn't there some debate whether philosophy is good or not in Islam? Like whether it's whether it's something that we should engage in?
So the only well, the opinion that I take at least is that if it's the
Yeah.
case that somebody is coming to you with philosophical arguments and stuff like that against Islam, then in that respect you are allowed to engage them back to refute them for these claims. But we don't make our basis of our belief based off of philosophy itself. The basis of our belief starts with the revelation and the reason with that revelation. Because the sound reasoning is never going to go against the revelation. It's always ever going to be, unsound reasoning going against revelation. You understand?
Okay, yeah, I got it. And Itachi, when Prophet Muhammad, he obviously, his intention was for the religion, and God's intention was for the religion to be spread right to as many people as possible. Like, did he did he outline a specific way of how it was supposed to be, how somebody was supposed to spread it? Like, did he want people to look to the prophecies? How exactly did he want the
There's
is there some
there's no one specific way that he says Islam is true because of this. Like, this is how you should go and give dawah. Rather, we look at the way that the Prophet, peace be upon him, portrayed himself to people, and we look at the different evidences. If there's different evidences that we could use, like for example, I know people who became Muslim simply because they liked the community that they saw around them. Okay. I know other people who became Muslim simply because they liked the jurisprudential rulings that Islam had to offer. I know people who became Muslim because of listening to prophecies. I know people who became Muslim simply because of the lifestyle of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and so on, right? People can become Muslim through a very different means from one another, okay? It doesn't negate the idea, or obviously one of them could be a stronger proof. It depends on what we're meaning by proof here. But generally speaking, it's really dependent on the person and what it is that bears the most importance to them in that regard, right? But if we're going to go based off of like a logical perspective and such, then I would say like each of those would have a varying degree of which one would obviously be better in terms of using as a proof for Islam.
And Itachi, would you say that all of them are kind of equally Muslim, like someone such as yourself who has logical arguments and prophecies and things like that?
They would all be considered Muslims, but there could be people who are stronger in their faith than others. Like, the only thing that would differentiate between one Muslim and another is their faith. It's not to do with anything else.
Yeah, and theoretically, like somebody who has come to Islam through maybe they haven't had all the arguments and things of that nature, might have, it's at least theoretically possible that they might have less faith than somebody who joined because they like the community or something like that, right?
No, I mean that's not
Like,
that's not really how you would weigh it out. You could have a differing amount of faith for a number of different reasons. It doesn't have to do with that specifically, and it's something that fluctuates with all people. So it's not something that stays 100% for one person for the entirety of their life, and the other person it stays at like 45%. Right? It fluctuates for everybody. It goes up and down some days, weeks, months, years, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Itachi, thank you so much for your time.
No
Thanks.
problem. No problem.
Thank you. Take care.
Have a
Bye.
good night. All right. Come on, man. Come on, man. We need Cabo Verde to win, man. I need Cabo Verde to win. I'm not trying to have Egypt go against Argentina, man. I don't need Argentina. I don't want Argentina. It's going into overtime. Imagine Argentina loses, bro. Imagine. That'll actually be crazy. Let me see 1 second. Let me just timestamp this. 59. Alright, let's bring the next person. Hello?
Hello? Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I just wanted to start by saying I'm agnostic. So
Okay.
the past conversation you were having was really interesting, and I'm kind of in a similar position where I'm researching different religions, trying to see what fits.
Okay.
And I think Islam is, out of the Abrahamic religions at least, probably the most true. But there are some things that I was wondering about, because obviously if I want to be part of a religion, I want to kind of believe in it 100%.
Okay. So those things that you were wondering about, are they sort of things that are holding you back from becoming a Muslim? Like if you got the answer to them, you would become Muslim?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Some of it, again, for background, sorry, I'm a bit nervous,
No, no
so
worries.
bear with me. So I come from a science background. I'm studying towards a degree in astrophysics. So there are some science aspects of things that I don't fully understand. There are some moral things that I don't fully understand, but I also realize that it could be my own misreading of the text or misunderstanding of the text. So I
Okay.
just wanted to ask you a few questions.
Of course. Yeah. Go ahead.
So the first one is like I've started reading the Quran, and it mentions that Allah seals people's hearts from understanding God or being Muslim, and then punishes them for it. So I was wondering why kind of an all-knowing, all-powerful God would seal people's hearts and then punish them for it and not give them a chance for
Right.
salvation.
So he does actually give them the chance. The problem is that these individuals didn't want that chance. Okay. So when he says that he seals off their hearts, or that he guides whom he wills and misguides whom he wills, for example, these are all based off of the person themselves initially. Okay. So the person who wants to actually be genuine and learn about Islam, for example, or just learn about God, right? A person who's just inclined, right, towards proper learning and open to the truth and so on. That person, Allah makes it easier for them to have the explanation shown to them. Whereas somebody who is, very firm in their understanding, they don't really care for whatever anybody else has to say. They will see an evidence, for example, and they will come up with some sort of like cope answer for it. Like, let's say, if I was to show you like the most, like, let's say right now, okay, if there was somebody in front of you who, let's say 1400 years ago, during the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, presuming that it was true, okay, that he actually split the moon, let's say, okay, and you yourself see it with your own eyes, a normal person would come to the conclusion that, yeah, he's probably telling the truth if he was able to do something like that. Whereas somebody who's, staunchly against this idea of being receptive towards what he's saying would try to come up with some sort of like excuse for, oh, well, that he's just doing magic, right? He's doing X, Y, Z, and, come up with some sort of ridiculous answer to bypass what it is that he did. You understand?
Yeah.
Right. So this is it's talking about the genuineness of the individual themselves. If the person is genuine, Allah makes it easy for them to be able to gain that understanding. If the person is disingenuous, Allah will make it, easy for them as well. He makes what you want easy for you. Okay? If you want to stay disingenuine, right, I'll make it easy for you to stay disingenuine. If you want to be genuine, then I'll make it easy for you to be genuine as well. You understand?
Yeah, I think where I find it hard to, I guess, understand or believe necessarily is the the idea that God would be all knowing and all, like designed you from the moment of birth, so could design you to be open, but for some reason doesn't. Like that's an issue that I have with Christianity as well.
That's
But
presuming that he doesn't, though. We do believe that he does design us that way. We believe that everybody is born with a natural inclination towards the proper belief, right, or the proper understanding, at least, of God, and that over time, for example, things like society or family or whatever it may be, may influence the individual such that this could become corrupted. Okay. But that doesn't negate the fact that the person still has a brain that they can use to be able to come to basic conclusions about things. You understand?
yeah,
Right.
I understand. I think, yeah, it's something that I've always struggled to, but it's something that I definitely want to read more into because, again, it could just be misunderstandings. I guess it's the whole all powerful could do anything kind of thing.
Right. But he gives us the free will to be able to come to these conclusions, right? So him being all powerful is not like, for example, he's going to he sees this person, for example, not really struggling to get there, but they're also, they're dabbling in the waters of trying to understand and stuff, but they don't really care if they do it this way or that way. Well, you know what? I'm just gonna, randomly, I'm just going to put like, a dead bird in front of them and bring it back to life to prove to them that I'm God and I'm real, right? It doesn't work like
Yeah.
that. The odds of each person being able to come to the truth is going to be fairly equal. Okay, and it's going to be equal based off of the amount of intelligence that the individual has, for example, the abilities that the person is presented with, the situations and circumstances that are, present within their lives. Each and every single person has that ability to be able to come to that conclusion, whether it be via learning Islam itself or via coming to the conclusion based off of natural reasoning. You understand? Because it's not even the case that you would need Islam necessarily to come to the conclusion of there being one God.
Yeah. How would Islam explain? So obviously, I'm from England. The chances, of me being born Christian or kind of secular is very, very high. If I was born in Indonesia, my chances of being Muslim would be very, very high. Why are some countries more likely to be saved than others, and more likely to have the opportunity to learn about Islam or learn about Christianity, for example, whichever religion would be true?
Got you. So like I said, okay, it's not only based off of their knowledge of Islam, because there could very well be individuals who never hear about Islam in their entire lives, okay?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they still can't use their brain, like I was saying, to come to the conclusion of there being one God. Okay, a person who's never exposed to Islam is not held accountable for that which they were never exposed to. Okay, those people would be given a separate test on the Day of Judgment, provided that they were still able to come to the conclusion of there being one God, right? Because, for example, let's say a Hindu never heard about Islam. Okay, but that Hindu, for example, could still use their brain to come to the conclusion, hey, this cow doesn't really have any actual power over me. I can, slaughter it and eat it and all of these different things, right? It doesn't have like the power to save me or to do anything in particular, right? It can die just as well as I can die, right? So they can use their brain to reason that that's probably not what I should be worshiping. And they could use their brain to also reason that there is something that did create us, okay? What that something is, all of the details specifically about it, those would obviously come from a religion, right? But you could come to a general conclusion that there is some sort of necessary thing which created all other things, and that thing should be understood to some certain degree, to which case then you could start expanding into maybe other beliefs and stuff and learning about them, if it's the case that the belief that you were grown up with or grown around with doesn't match it. You understand? Right.
So essentially, somebody who would never have learned about Islam and say they didn't come to the conclusion that there was one God, are they still going to be punished for that?
Somebody who never learned about Islam and they still didn't believe in one God?
Yeah.
Yeah, that person would be punished, because the belief of one God is intuitive, or at least one creator is intuitive. Even if they have like a misunderstanding of what it is specifically because they don't have the details, If they just simply believed in a monotheistic God and they didn't have that guidance from Islam, that's fine. But if they don't come to the conclusion of a monotheistic God and they start worshipping multiple gods or stones and all these things, then that person would be considered polytheist. A polytheist doesn't get salvation, no.
I just find it hard to reconcile that with my own, I guess, intuitive morality, which I guess people can disagree with. But punishing somebody for just not coming to the conclusion that there's one God just seems a bit intense.
Okay.
Sorry.
But the only reason why you're saying that is because you're coming from a perspective where it's like, oh, well, I didn't ever learn about Islam prior to XYZ time. Some other person might not have learned about Islam. But it's not about Islam in and of itself, right? The whole point is that the recognition of what it is or what it means to be alive or what it means to exist, like it's a question that pretty much everybody thinks of throughout their whole life, right? Why do I exist, right? It's probably the one question that every single person shares, at least one time in their life. It's not an original thought or anything of the sort, right? If that person thinks of that and they expand just a little bit further on that thought, right, they're going to come to a conclusion of, maybe I'm here for this, maybe I'm here for that. Well, what is it that brought me here? It can't be just simply my parents. My parents are, they would have had the same question as me and so on, right? They could start pondering this question. But if the person just genuinely doesn't want to think about it, then that person is doing it to themselves. You understand? They're just willfully trying to be ignorant. Yeah.
I guess I just disagree. I don't particularly think that, like, obviously, like you said, it's something that everybody thinks about. It's something that, again, like I said, I come from a science background. So,
well, I mean, regardless, whether I'm able to convince you of that perspective or you convincing me of yours, it's not something that proves or disproves a religion, okay? It's just going to be an opinion that you would hold, and it's only true given the idea that the paradigm itself is true, okay? That's what we would actually have to talk about, is whether or not the paradigm is true.
I guess, yeah, it's something that I think maybe I don't know. Also, I'm seeing all of the comments. I am being sincere. I don't know why it's seeing that I post feminist content is...
Don't worry about the comments. It's fine.
Yeah. But I guess I disagree with that one. But talking about the science, which is what I'm more interested in, and it's something that, again, I find disagreements when I look at the other Abrahamic religions as well. But, for example, I know more about Christianity because I grew up in England. But the belief in the firmament, the disbelief in evolution, things like that nature, I don't know where Islam stands.
Regarding, like, evolution and such?
Evolution, the firmament, things like that, I'm not sure.
We don't believe in the firmament.
Okay.
Okay,
good.
In terms of evolution, we don't affirm macroevolution, but we do, there's no issue with affirming microevolution. Macroevolution, though, obviously the typical science perspective would be, it having a common ancestor. We would just say that there's a common creator. Okay.
But what about the other, like, hominid species, for example? How would that be explained?
Yeah, very simply because correlation is not going to automatically mean that it's, actually the case, right? Correlation does not equate to causation. Let me just, I'm going to bring a friend of mine really quick, just because I need to take a little bit of a break. One sec.
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Tasha. How are you doing, sister?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Yeah, she's chilling. She's just asking, some questions that she had about Sam.
Okay.
Right.
I heard a couple things about micro and macro evolution. Am I correct?
Yeah, I was just wondering where Islam stands on... We already covered that you don't believe in the firmament, which is something that I find a bit ridiculous in Christianity. But yeah, about evolution, where does Islam stand?
Right. So, you find what ridiculous? Sorry, I didn't understand you.
The firmament, like the earth is flat and there's a big dome on top of us and...
Yeah.
Stuff.
Right. So, I assume you're agnostic at the moment.
Yeah, agnostic.
Okay. And you have contentions with the rejection of macroevolution, I assume?
I don't understand necessarily in general where Islam stands on evolution. I think we
Okay.
were just about to explain it, but yeah.
Islam stands on evolution. Well, look, so we know evolution's generally split into macro and micro. So you're just asking, why does Islam at all even accept any notion of evolution, right?
Not necessarily because, like, I come from a science background. I believe in evolution. I think we have an abundance of evidence. But obviously, when it comes
Gotcha,
to
okay.
the Abrahamic religions, there's the whole Adam and Eve. Again, like, I don't know much, so feel free to correct me.
Okay, I'm trying to gauge more of what you're saying. So you're saying that we have an abundant amount of evidence that supports evolution as a whole, and you find it
Yeah.
ridiculous that the Abrahamic religions reject it, right?
That's strong wording, but yeah, I just kind of want to know how you can reject the evidence that we have.
Okay, so the evidence that we have, when you say the evidence that we have, I assume you're talking about the quote-unquote evidence that we have for macroevolution. What evidence would we have for that?
I mean, we've got all of the different, so you can go back and look at the species before humans. We have different hominid species, which I think would be interesting how the Abrahamic religions would explain those, because of the
Like-
origin stories of Adam and Eve, for example. Would they have made the
like
extra?
It's like I told you, where evolution will say that it's a common ancestor, we would just simply say it's a common creator. Because it's only going to be based off of a correlation that these things have similarities between them. It's
Right,
not going to be-
exactly.
Yeah.
We aren't necessarily derivatives of these hominid species you're talking about. That's just an assumption that is made due to the fact that it looks like we're derivatives simply because we share a lot of, common properties and whatnot, right? But the thing is that we don't really see any evidence to the fact that we are derivatives, except the fact that we're just similar. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So, for instance, right, we are Homo sapiens. You agree?
Yes.
Okay, right. So us being Homo sapiens, right, we would say that Adam and Eve were also Homo sapiens in this case,
Yes.
right? And we would say that here, for instance, here, let me tell you where Islam agrees with evolution, right? So would you say that a dramatic change in genotype, meaning that a dramatic change in height, would that be considered like microevolution or macroevolution in this case?
When you say a dramatic change in height, do you mean like I'm 5 foot, I give birth to like a 6 foot child?
No,
Is that
like
For
what
instance,
you
for
mean?
instance,
Or
Adam and
period
Eve,
of time.
Adam was alayhi salam. Correct me if I'm wrong, Itachi, he was approximately 90 cubits tall.
Well, there's
Right?
difference of opinion on that. It's some people say that that's what his height was in Jannah, and that he ended up having a different height when he was on Earth and such. But generally speaking, we do observe, like biologically speaking, throughout the evolution of humans and such, that there was a difference in height, such that they were taller
Yeah.
at some points, and now they're
Absolutely. Like
this
for
average height
instance,
that we have
David,
now.
during the time of David Goliath, we see descriptions that essentially illustrate that these people were borderline giants, right?
Right.
Like they were above, for instance, 10 feet tall. Okay, so would this be like in my opinion, I would say that this is a form of like it's on the larger scale of microevolution. Would you agree with that?
Right. It would be, because it's still within the same one species. It's just going to be a differentiation within that species, like
Right.
a differentiation of genes or something.
Correct. So this is where Islam, sister at the bottom, this is where Islam would definitely agree that it's undeniable that the genotypes have been changing across history, right? And this comes from things like nutrition, lifestyle, environment, epigenetic changes. So that's essentially where Islam stands, right? There's going to be large major changes within the species, right? But we aren't going to say that the species itself would evolve into a different species. I think that's what your contention, right?
yeah, that's my contention, because again, there's such an abundance of evidence. We can go back to species before humans. We can see the progression.
Like
We
what?
can literally line it up. Like you can go back to literally from the earliest Cambrian period single cell organisms, pretty much all the way up until humans.
مرحبا
You can
بك
see
في
the
موقع
step-by-step.
كورة سيتي انظر.
Tashi, we hear that.
Yeah, go ahead.
And anyways, so Here, what do you think us humans? Let me ask you this. What do you think we were derived from, if that makes sense?
Us humans as we are now, or life in
Yeah.
general? Us humans, we can
Yeah,
go
not
back.
life. I don't care about that. Yeah, us humans.
Well, I mean, if you go back far enough, single cell organisms, going further, we grew limbs, we crawled out of the water, mammals evolved.
Don't you think it's
Big Bang.
extremely hard to demonstrate that, though?
Not really, because we have demonstrated it.
How?
Again, like I said, we have all of the different fossils in between our species and the earliest species. We can see, if you line them up, you can see the changes and you can see evolution happening.
We would have to
today,
see
for
that.
example.
Not gonna lie.
What, like you wouldn't believe it unless you saw it, kind of thing.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need to see the evidence that these quote unquote species. It's actually a really proof demanding claim. Unfortunately, evolution, right? This is why it,
I agree.
yeah. So it's extremely proof demanding, which is why it's typically a long conversation. What you would essentially have to do on the bare minimum is to first give the timeline, and then give the species chronologically, sequentially changing, and the evidence that this happened, right? Which I think would be the hardest part, right? That you can even demonstrate that such species were changing in this manner. And that's the bare minimum. If you can do that, I'll clap it up for you, to be honest. Let's start with that.
Well, like you said, it would be a very, very long conversation
know.
if I went through every
I know.
single species going back. But I mean, I can send you different resources.
I wouldn't
that
even need
show
that, to be honest. I'll be more charitable. I'm by the way, I'm about to get to my house and I have guests at my house, so I'll probably have to end this
Have a
conversation
nice
soon.
time.
Yeah, but if you could give like the first three species, for instance, right? Like you said, like single cell organisms and how they evolved. That like the first 3 or 4 evolutions after that would actually be significant, in my opinion, in itself.
Yeah, well, going back as far as the first 3 ever organisms that we have evidence for were single cell bacteria, eukaryotes, the reason why they would have evolved is, well, sorry, this is like really hard to explain at 2
It
a.m.
is. You're good. Don't worry. You're good.
So the
Shit, my
way
phone's
that
up on.
Oh, no worries, man.
are you good?
No,
Yeah, go ahead.
he's saying his phone's about to die.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, like we can see the way that they evolved. We can compare it with modern day DNA. I was having this conversation with a friend, because they're in a similar situation. Is why I've been really interested in Islam, because of the conversations with my friend. But we can see, for example, comparisons when we look at species today, and we look at species that were similar going back hundreds of thousands of years ago, like horseshoe crabs, for example, and we can isolate the different genes in their DNA sequence that would have had to have changed, and we can trace back and find species which look almost identical to what we would predict they would look like.
Right, but do you understand how this is only going to be based off of correlation, right? It's not going to be the case that we could say definitively 100% that this thing evolved from this thing, right? This is all going to be based off of correlation, and even when it comes to macroevolution and the differentiation of species and such, this is going to still be something which is not necessarily how do I put this? Rigid or fixed, because there are different approaches. There are different approaches as to how they differentiate between species, whether it be through the ability to be able to sexually reproduce from one another and so on. Right. But then what we find is that there could be an overlap between different species such that they are able to sexually reproduce with one another, in which case they have to account for these types of anomalies as well. Right. So it all depends. But ultimately, it's all going to be based off of some sort of correlation. It's not going to be something which is definitive. So the question is just simply going to be, well, which sort of hypothesis should we go with, right? Should we go with the idea that we are, all evolving from other species that came before us, or can we still posit the idea that we were created and that there is some sort of common ancestor that talks about our creation, right? However, The problem or the difference between the two is that evolution still does not give us anything in regards to the idea of the origin of these of life, right? Whereas the Islamic account will still give us a account of the origin of life and so on. You understand? So it still leaves something unanswered,
Yeah.
right?
Basically, what would be the explanation that would be held to justify the quote unquote evolution? That's the question, basically. To put it simply, for instance, I'll give you a format. You know, these single cell cellular organisms you were talking about being the start of life, right? What would be the explanation of the evolution, meaning that them evolving into another species? What's the explanation to that? Like, why did that happen and how? I think that's the core difference that we have. Like, how would you explain that?
Well, we started off with prokaryotes, and then it's
Okay.
called endosymbiosis,
Right,
which
but where did the
essentially was.
prokaryotes come from?
Well, we don't know. That's the whole thing.
Right, that's the
Like,
issue, is that
as-
doesn't answer
yeah.
it to the origin of life.
I'm not.
But
I'm
but
not
it's
saying
okay.
that
No, it's
science.
okay. Like, well, it's okay. We know that it doesn't. And I don't want to go down that route, to be honest, because I think she understands that, and that would be more difficult to prove, and that's okay. But to a simpler point that we could give you to address would be like, okay, these prokaryotes, what's going to be the explanation to them evolving into another species? Like, what could possibly explain that?
Yeah, well, that's what endosymbiosis is. It was essentially one prokaryote ate another prokaryote, and it created a eukaryote.
Now
Which
that
was
right there,
essentially-
now that right there is the question. Why would that occur?
Because it's the same thing about modern day parasites. It's all about, and the same thing with plants. It's just about breeding as much as possible to pass on and to survive.
But that wouldn't be
just-
breeding, because there's no breeding going on here. It's just
No,
seems
but
like
they're
it's more of
eating the
consumption.
energy.
Right.
Yeah.
So why would the consumption of a prokaryote cause something else?
Well, it didn't cause something else. The reason it would
A
have happened that
derivative.
is thought of, like, why it would have happened is essentially just to decrease the competition. Like, if you're eating your competitors, you're decreasing your competition.
But
And-
huge assumption there that eating like
Yeah,
a
I agree.
prokaryote, a prokaryote eating another one would essentially give a derivative that is not it.
It's not that it was a derivative that wasn't it. It's that
Okay.
basically the prokaryote formed the the nuclei of the cell. So if you look at cells still to this day, the nucleus is essentially what would have been the primordial prokaryote.
Correct. I
Like,
don't
I'm not
disagree
gonna
there.
say, yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and say that we have, like, again, from a science background, I'm very, very happy to say I don't know when I don't know something. And that's
Absolutely. And I
partially why
honor
I'm
that.
looking
I honor
for-
that, truly.
Yeah, that's partially why I'm looking for what's spiritual belief, because I don't think that they're incompatible, but I would ideally like to find something that I can marry with my scientific beliefs, if that makes sense, which
You're
is
at the
why
right
I'm
spot.
asking these questions.
Yes. So, yes, I appreciate that, honestly, and it does demonstrate that you're honest, right? So now, okay, so notice, we were talking about the nuclei, and now I wanted to ask a question. So the prokaryote, we would agree that the prokaryote in this case would be the start of the chronology of life. Granted,
That
it
we know
came
of,
from
yeah.
nothing. Right. What did that evolve into?
What, the eukaryote?
Prokaryote.
The prokaryote would have been engulfed by another prokaryote, forming the eukaryote. From there, off the top of my head, I don't know, I'd have to Google that.
Okay, what was the start of the sequence? Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Was it the eukaryote, according to your view?
The prokaryote would have been the start.
Okay.
There would have been
Now-
prokaryotes, and then one would have absorbed the other, forming a eukaryote.
Okay, so a eukaryote is just an abundance of prokaryotes, correct?
A eukaryote is a cell with a nucleus, essentially.
Cool. And that is essentially the combination of multiple prokaryotes, according to what you just said, or am I wrong?
In a very simplified way. Like, I won't complicate it because I know that can be boring.
No, it's okay. But are we on the right page? Are we like on the same
On the
page
right,
here?
yeah, basically, it's close enough to it doesn't matter. Yeah,
Okay, so I would say that this would be less macroevolution then. Do we agree?
in that short of a time span, yes.
Okay. So we don't have an issue with that, right? We would agree that an abundance of prokaryotes binding or whatnot would create a eukaryote. This is scientifically true. No one can deny this. The gray area is usually where we make a jump, right, over these quote unquote millions of years that pass, that there would exist some sort of like a huge jump and change of genotype and whatnot, right? So, holy, did they just score? Look. Okay. Anyways, so what would you say would be the first instance of macroevolution that we observe?
Well, it's hard to pinpoint an exact because obviously these changes take over hundreds of thousands of years.
Correct.
So there's not any one point. So, for example, we're still observing species evolving today. We can witness this happening today. We can't say right now there's an example of macroevolution, for example, but in 100,000 years, that would be an example of macroevolution.
Correct. Okay, I agree with that. We cannot point or pinpoint to a specific time within the sequence where like, oh, macroevolution occurred. Why? Because it will take hundreds of thousands of years, if not more, for us to observe this. So I agree with you on that. But what I'm specifically, okay, here, let me simplify it. So give me an instance of macroevolution that we have observed.
An instance of macroevolution that we have observed. So I'm going to Google it because I
You're good.
don't know the name off the top
You're
of my
good.
head.
You're
But
good. You don't have to worry about that. You're good.
I'm only using this example because I think it's actually a really adorable species and I think everyone should know about it. Sorry, that's my little nerd aside.
Educate us.
It is called the... Where is it? Sorry. It would have been called it's the Morgan something. That's all I know off the top of my head. It was the Morganucodon, which is the first mammal. So
Okay.
obviously we can see that from the first mammal, the Morganucodon, we can then see a macroevolution to the mammals we see today. You could
Interesting.
mention any mammal. You could even go back to, for example, whales used to look like wolves, but then because they had to hunt in the water and in the ocean, they had to adapt to live in the ocean, and now they look like whales.
Notice the correlation here that, they look like wolves, therefore providing or some stronger probability to the argument or to the thesis of macroevolution. So yes, there is correlation obviously between different species, but what's specifically being attacked here is what is going to justify this correlation being something that relates to causation, right? So for instance, let's talk about the properties of a mammal. Name some properties of a mammal that you know of. One of them is procreation, right? Being able to procreate.
Procreating, warm-blooded, don't lay eggs except for platypuses for some odd reason. Produces milk.
Okay. So we need to talk about these properties and how they came about. This is important, right? How did the first mammal truly inherit these properties? How did it attain these properties? Warm-blooded, being able to reproduce and whatnot. Before the first mammal, we would say that reproduction was different, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Well, yeah, it would have been asexual reproduction at the very beginning, and now obviously most species that's not the case.
Okay. So what caused this? Now, we are just assuming asexual reproduction, right? Just to assume asexual reproduction, what was the change over these years that caused asexual reproduction to essentially migrate or become non-asexual reproduction, right? Meaning that these individuals, they were actually made to look different, like within like the dimorphic worldview, right? So what I mean by dimorphism is the sexual, like this sexual dimorphism essentially refers to the how we can differentiate masculinity with femininity,
Yeah.
right? So this is important within evolution. We agree, right? So
Yes.
with that being said, this mammal, now we are going to be talking about dimorphism. This is a new property that this mammal or this thing has inherited. Dimorphism wasn't really a thing. Why? Because there was no gender to really kind of differentiate, because it was just asexual reproduction. We are assuming asexual reproduction here, by the way. I'm not saying that I even
Yeah.
believe in that, but to assume that,
Yeah,
okay,
no, that's fine.
so these properties that spawned, essentially, I'm not going to say spawn, because obviously the thesis isn't, just going to say it's spawned. There's obviously a gradual process, right? Now, what I'm saying is, okay, what possibly happened within this time frame sequentially that caused the first mammal to inherit things like dimorphism, warm-bloodedness, the ability to not laying eggs except for one specific animal, like you mentioned, the platypus.
Yeah.
What caused this right here?
So when a species reproduces asexually, the process of evolution is extremely slow, and there's also a very, very big risk of a lack of genetic diversity. So the development of non-asexual reproduction would have decreased the time that it would have taken to evolve, and increased genetic diversity.
I agree, but that's what I'm asking, right? So before mammals actually, were brought out, we spoke about, I forgot the name of what was the name again?
Yeah, it's okay. Morganucodon or something like that.
Sure. So that first animal, or that first mammal, right? It had to have, these properties. It had to have inherited it somehow, correct?
Yes. Well, non-asexual reproduction would have happened way before the first mammal. This would have happened while we were still cells.
Okay.
So, for example, parasites and stuff like that, and multiple cell organisms can also reproduce non-asexually. But yeah, it would have happened way before mammals.
When you say produce non-asexually, what type of reproduction was happening?
Sexual. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that on TikTok.
Okay, so parasites, essentially, you're saying that male and female parasites were breeding?
Well, yeah, I mean, if we go back far enough, then yes, they would have been at the time.
Okay.
This would have been a long time after the first prokaryotes, but yes, it would have happened before the first mammal.
Okay, good. So now my question is this mammal that came about, what could have possibly influenced its warm-bloodedness to come out? That's the first one, and its non-ability to lay eggs.
So the laying eggs one is easier to explain. It's essentially when an animal lays eggs, it's a lot riskier, because obviously you have predators that eat animals' eggs. If you keep your young inside of your body for longer and allow them to grow more and then give birth to them, for example, look at horses, they can walk pretty much in the first few hours. They can follow their parents around, and the mothers won't have to leave them to go and hunt, to go and find food.
I see. This is fine, right? I agree that laying eggs would be riskier, but this in itself, unfortunately, is actually a large presupposition within evolution. Like, for instance, right? Some people say that camels, the reason why they have such thick eyelashes and eyelids is so that, or the reason why is because they live in such a harsh environment, such that the animal developed it, right? But the question is why? Why are we to accept that environmentally, this animal has to adapt? Adaptation is a huge presupposition, in my opinion, within evolution in itself, and it's used as one of the proofs, right, for the change, the macro change. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I know this is going on long, so if you need to kick me, please, I won't think you're
No,
rude.
you're good. I have to leave anyway. I'm literally outside my house. No, you're fine. You're fine. We can, by the way, we can definitely continue this conversation. I think you're a really good interlocutor. I'm not gonna lie. I think you know what you're talking about. Yeah. So I might have to cut it in like a minute or two because I have to go inside. But you can
Cool.
wrap this up really quick if you have an
Yeah,
answer. It's okay if you don't.
I'll just reply to what you said. But yeah, I know this has probably gone on for longer than a lot of people care to listen to. But I think the misunderstanding when it comes to evolution is the idea that species have to do something in order to evolve. That's not necessarily what we see. It's essentially if they don't, they will die. So, for example, the earliest, like pre-mammals, pre the first mammal, like I said,
What
they wouldn't have
influences that
just
change though? Like that's my
yeah,
question.
yeah,
Yeah.
they basically they wouldn't have had to they wouldn't have gone from laying eggs to not laying eggs. Essentially, the eggs would have been laid later and later and later until eventually they just kind of didn't lay eggs at all.
You see what
Because
I'm saying? That
because
gap
the
right there, that gap is like
because
kind
the
of gray.
sorry, just let because the mammals or the animals, sorry, because they wouldn't have been mammals at this point, the mammals that would have laid eggs earlier, those eggs would have been eaten, and therefore the babies that held those genes that laid eggs earlier would not have been able to grow up and pass those genes on. So only the mammal or the animals, sorry, that kept the eggs inside longer and allowed them to gestate for longer periods of time would have passed on their genes, which just would have basically snowballed.
Correct. Now, I agree with you that those individuals that would keep their eggs, they have a higher chance of surviving, right? And that laying eggs generally is it's disadvantageous within wildlife, right? Because you're extremely susceptible to having them destroyed and eaten, and that the mammal is far superior. Because, like for instance, you mentioned the horse, able to essentially,
Yeah.
walk and whatnot immediately, right? It's very cool. So, but this is my question: why is it more probable, and why is the inference to the best possible explanation that these animals, non-mammals, essentially they had to, or not they had to, they changed and they evolved such that they became mammals? Why is it more probable that instead of them dying out, that they evolve into mammals than them just dying out? I just think that in itself is the biggest presupposition within the thesis of evolution.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable. And like I said, these changes happen over like hundreds of thousands of years. And the animals which, for example, continue to lay eggs, we see them now, like reptiles. They just change into different because different genes were passed on. So it's literally just chance. And again, we see it now. There's a really cool example of this isn't my area of science, so my memory's really awful with the names, but there's this really cool example of a moth that looks exactly like tree bark, and essentially because of deforestation they are dying out. But the moths which look slightly more like textured brick are surviving because they're able to camouflage better and aren't being killed as much when they're camouflaged on houses.
Correct.
The moths that
Correct.
adapted to trees. And it's literally just tiny genetic advantages which slowly snowball over tens and tens of thousands and
But
thousands of years.
you see, that's correct. But what's the snowball? What can possibly justify that other than just saying that it was just a a slow, continuous change that lasted over, tens of centuries, for instance, 20s of centuries, right? That's the question. Why is that occurring?
Why? Because they would die if they didn't hope that. I mean, that's again,
Right.
you don't have
They
to.
would die,
They
right?
just
But
would die.
okay, good. They would die. Now, why is it more probable that they evolved into, they genetically evolved such that they are more advantageous in the wildlife versus them dying out? Why does it work that way? Why don't they just die out?
Because of genetic diversity. So, for example, like I said with the moth example, the moths are going to have, whilst they are adapted to blend in with the tree bark, the tree surfaces, not all of them are going to look identical. Some of them are going to look slightly different, and those slightly different are more likely to survive. So the reason why not all of them die out is because there is this genetic diversity. They're not all identical,
I
which is
agree
why
they
we
don't.
evolved.
Yeah, I agree they don't all die out, but my specific contention is like the snowfall you're talking about, or like this forced change, what it looks like in nature. right? For instance, you're talking about these moths. They blend extremely well within bark, and that actually helps them live, within forests. But due to deforestation, their probability of living is dramatically decreased. I agree with that.
Yes.
But now the thesis that you're proposing is that, okay, now that being the case, there's going to be some evolution happening such that they will be able to adapt to other things, like for instance, brick, right?
Yes.
Because deforestation is occurring, and now we have revolutionized the world, and there's some industrial things that came into play. So what I'm saying is that yes, I specifically agree that there are definitely animals or insects in this case that differ slightly, yet not all of them die out because they do not all have the same genotype. Hence why some animals or insects live and age better, and they don't really die out as much or become extinct due to their advantageous properties. How you were saying, due to the revolutionization, of this world, they were forced to quote unquote adapt to these bricks. So
Yes.
what I'm saying is, why were they forced? Okay, they will die out. You said they would die out if they
Yes.
wouldn't essentially evolve. Okay, well, why wouldn't it be the case that they would just die out? Why would that not be something that is probable? Why are we assuming that they need to live
It is
and
probable.
reproduce?
Lots of species have just died out.
That's what we're saying, right? So, but wait, your original justification for evolution was such that adaptation is necessary so that they don't just die out. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. There are some species that are able to adapt and therefore survive. There are some species that unfortunately weren't able to adapt and died. So, for example, I don't know where Islam stands on dinosaurs. I know Christianity, a lot of people just deny it. So, I don't know if you want to get into that. But when the meteor hit Earth and basically killed off so many of the large warm-blooded animals, a lot of the animals that were able to, so for example, fish, animals that were underwater, animals that were able to burrow underground and forage for food, they survived because of the situation it didn't completely wipe them out. They were able to find some methods of survival, but there were many that just died. It's completely dependent on the specific situation, the change, or what's predating on them that allows, so for example, if it's a situation where there's a predator, most of the time the species are able to kind of even themselves out, because if there's too little prey, the predators won't be able to eat as much food as they need to. Whereas if there's an abundance of prey, the predators are able to breed more, and because they're able to eat more. So species are able to adapt and don't go extinct because they kind of keep themselves in symbiosis. Whereas something more dramatic, like a meteor hitting the Earth, some animals are completely wiped out, others survive. It completely depends on the situation.
Okay. So I agree with you a little bit, but here is the problem. I think that we've introduced some sort of arbitrariness within this conversation, and I think you'll be able to understand where I'm coming from. I think that we've introduced arbitrariness. Why? Because the original justification for macroevolution, the general justification on why species evolve versus just dying out, is that essentially they are required to live. And that one of the only methods of living is the fact that they have to adapt properly. And that would induce or introduce some sort of macro evolutionary change. Correct?
I get where you're coming from, but I don't entirely.
But I'm not done with my point. No. This is my point.
Yeah. I'll let you finish then.
You're good. I was just asking a clarifier. But my specific point is that you're saying that there are some species that did not evolve and they died out. And that we are going to say that another hypothesis for individuals that didn't die, meaning the animals or whatnot, was because they needed to live. Okay, well, why are we introducing that hypothesis and presupposing that that's the case for these specific individuals versus actual insects or animals that just died off? Why are we not introducing some sort of evolutionary hypothesis here?
All species, again, correct me if I've misunderstood because I don't want to misrepresent your point. But all species need to live. They all need, it's not a conscious decision that they make. It's just, does the environment allow them to survive?
Correct. The goal is to
like,
essentially live. I agree with that.
yeah, so essentially, like, going back to the example with like the dinosaurs, it's not that the mammals that survived, like the rodents that were able to burrow down in the earth, needed to live more than the dinosaurs. It's just that the situations allowed for them to survive more so
Correct.
than the dinosaurs.
Okay, I agree with that. But so okay, let's talk about that. So these rodents, they were advantageous within this instance, right? The meteor that hit the earth, the cold-blooded animals suffered immensely. Correct?
Yes.
That's because they didn't have the properties in which would allow them to live essentially during this event. There are rodents that are smaller, and they were able to crawl underground, for example, like theoretically, they were able to essentially mitigate the event better. Now, what I'm saying is that, okay, granted, there are definitely animals that are more advantageous than others when specifically talking about like these events, sure. But my contention specifically is the fact that we have to introduce some sort of evolutionary explanation. This, granted that every animal's goal is to live and reproduce. Why are we assuming that there must be some evolutionary change in order for them to adapt and to survive, despite the fact their goal is to survive? Why are we taking that option over the other option, being that they just die out? Considering there are species that definitely died out, why are we trying to justify other species that quote unquote presumably did not die and trying to justify their ability to adapt with evolution?
It's just, sorry, can you rephrase? I don't know if I misunderstood or something.
You're good. It was a huge question, not gonna lie. So basically back to my point, we have we have two animals. This animal,
Yes.
if he does not theoretically, if this, let's say we have animal A, animal B.
Yes.
Animal A, in this case, they are living in a climate such that this climate they're living in, it gives them it's extremely disadvantageous. For example, let's say they're living in a very cold environment and they're very frail. They don't have fur. They're gonna die, right? Now my question is that animal forced to then evolve?
It's not, maybe it's the contention with the words, and again, I don't mean to be super pedantic.
You're good.
I just want to be specific, but it's not that it's forced to evolve. If it's say a hairless animal that can't survive in the cold and it's in a cold environment, it's not that it's forced to evolve, it's that it just will die off. So the animals of this species, say if there are some which have slightly more hair than others, they are more likely to survive. I'm not saying that every single one of them will survive, but they are more likely to survive, and therefore they are more likely to pass on the more hairier rodent genes.
Okay. I don't think you're getting what I'm saying. That's fine, but
Okay, yeah.
I'll explain more. Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're good. Individuals that are hairier and colder climates obviously have a higher chance of living. That's fine. But remember, you said that adaptation is necessary for specific individuals to live, right?
Yes.
And that without adaptation, they're cooked and they will go extinct, right?
Yeah.
All right. What would be the justification there that there must be some sort of adaptation? So basically, we're assuming that nature has to continue, right? There has to be some sort of reproduction to continue. What specifically would stop us from saying that, okay, these individuals simply just died out, instead of us trying to introduce some sort of evolutionary hypothesis saying that, okay, well, they had to live. So what they did is they evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. There's two options, either the latter or the former or the latter.
So I think I understand what you're getting at, but can I just ask, how would you explain the animals we see and how they've evolved, so I can understand your point of view more?
Okay, good question. So animals, I obviously believe that a lot of animals underwent evolution, but not in the sense that you believe. So the explanation, firstly, I don't believe any animals macro evolved, right? I don't believe that any animal, went from one species to another. Like that would be like some reincarnation theory, right? Which it's kind of like a rhetorical joke, but that's what we don't believe that. So there wouldn't really be much explanation because we don't believe there's evidence for macro evolution, right?
Okay.
But within the microevolutionary world, absolutely. Like for instance, humans, we are considered animals. We would say that we have dramatically changed, on the microevolutionary part. Yeah, for instance, like we've shrunk for sure. Hand sizes, bones, like growth hormone production. Everything has changed right within our body, but we did not change species. This is what we believe about other animals. Like for instance, a dinosaur, like a popular theorization or theory is that dinosaurs, they are the roots of chickens, right? Which I honestly believe to be nonsense, because that would be, I honestly believe that is nonsense. Like that is something that we would deny, So there would be no like quote unquote explanation for why there is evolution, because we aren't even under the view that there is any macroevolution anyway.
Yeah, I guess my question is, that's like, I understand, thank you for explaining. My question is, how do you explain, for example, animals that went extinct or that we can tell have, for example, similar DNA? So, say a rabbit, how would you explain how that came to be? When we can see the fossil record going back 100,000 years, they wouldn't have been rabbits as we know them today, for example.
Definitely, they've changed, yeah. But I don't think they would be completely external to the rabbit species, in my opinion.
Even though they don't have anything in common, for example, the only thing we have are, for example, the intermediary species that link them to rabbits.
We would need justification for there even being an intermediary species that would differentiate them from being hares in the first place.
Okay.
That's essentially where we're at, right? So you're saying that there's a species A, and then there's an intermediary species B, and then we have hares that came from that, right? We need to really give an analysis on the intermediary species and how possibly we can correlate to the fact that there's some sort of causal link. That's essentially where we're at here.
Yeah, I guess I understand where you're coming from. I disagree. I think that we have a lot of evidence, and so, for example, like with intermediary species, we can see exactly when a species began to, for example, develop hair, and then from then how we kind of get to the animals that we can see today. I'm not here to like change your mind.
No,
If anything, I was hoping you could like
absolutely
influence my mind. So
Oh,
yeah,
no. Just so you know, this is actually a method. Sorry, my mom is spam calling me. Basically, what's happening is that this is a method to kind of quote unquote challenge you, which would influence your thinking, right? So,
Yeah.
but obviously, I could go on about ways in which would positively influence your understanding. And we would do that essentially by proving Islam to be true, right? So, proving Islam to be true would be my way to essentially go on about doing that, right? But with this, I'm challenging your belief in a way in which would influence your thinking. But I understand you're not here to change my mind at all. But I do have to go. Thank you, Itachi, for having me. And we can continue this conversation on Itachi's live whenever you're ready.
Or your live.
Yeah.
Or my live. Yeah, or my live.
This isn't his main account. His main account is Islamic Apex. He goes live as well sometimes. So make sure you follow him as well if you want to look for his other account, inshallah. Make sure you follow me in case you don't find his other accounts, and I could bring him back next time, okay?
Yeah. Thank you for talking to me. I don't want to keep any of your time. I know that this is probably really boring for people that aren't interested in science, and I feel bad.
It's not even that.
This much
Honestly,
time
everybody was on edge because of this game right now, but it's all good. It's all good. All
I
right,
know how you
sis.
feel England's playing Monday morning, but
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
I hope it goes well.
Yeah, England low-key was getting
Assalamu alaikum.
cooked. They were getting cooked,
Yeah,
and
I
all of a
know.
sudden they came out of nowhere. Wa alaikum salam, Anas. Yeah,
it's
but
not going well for us.
no, y'all low-key got it tough. Everybody's got it tough except for Argentina this round. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah,
I appreciate
well,
you, sis.
Best of luck. Thank you so
thank
much.
Have a good one.
Bye.
All right, guys. I'm going to call it here, inshallah, because low-key, Cabo Verde put me off, man. They put me off, man. They put me off. That was tough. They had 2 chances there at the end, too, man. I wasn't even hate watching. What you mean hate watching? I wanted Cabo to win, man. I wanted them to win. What you mean hate watching? Oh shoot, tomorrow's Saturday, you're right. I'm not too sure if they're dropping that video tomorrow or not, so we're gonna have to wait and see. We will wait and see. We will wait and see. There's actually 2 videos they're supposed to post. I don't know if they're gonna post either one of them. So we'll find out soon enough. Which team am I rooting for? We all Egypt, baby. That's Egypt right here. Oh wait, wrong side. We Egypt, man. This is Egypt. Egypt getting into round of 16. First time ever. There's a lot of first times ever in this World Cup. Y'all know the guy Imam Ashur, the first goal that he made in the World Cup, not in this game, the game in against Belgium, apparently they said it was the fastest or the strongest kick, I guess, in any World Cup game. It was the strongest kick. I think they said it was 123.4 or 0.9 kilometers per hour. That's crazy. Crazy. Now Argentina definitely not winning. Argentina losing next round. تحية مصر أم الدنيا. Yeah. Alright. I'm only gonna give it to you now because I'm gonna forget tomorrow. Let me see. Alright. I'm sorry, sister, but Argentina gone. No, hell no. Egypt is gonna beat Argentina. Egypt is making it to the finals and winning the whole thing, man. Egypt making it to the finals and winning the whole thing, man. Alright, guys. I'm gonna call it here, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you. If you're not already following, make sure you hit the follow button up at the top. I go live every day. I'm not sure, actually, if I'm gonna go live tomorrow. Depends, because I think I'm gonna go to my cousin's house, but we'll see. If they drop the debate tomorrow, maybe I'll do an early live. How about that? I'll probably do like a debate review live on TikTok, and we could stream it on TikTok and YouTube. Okay. So we'll see. If they drop that debate tomorrow, we could do a debate review live earlier, like around 12 or something. 12 Eastern. We'll see. Which debate is that? It's supposed to be Islamic Dilemma. But I don't know if they're going to drop it or not, so we'll see. Oh, no Muslim Q&A? Tough. We could do that Sunday. We can do it Sunday. Alright. We'll call it here. She needs to start looking at the chat more often. Did something happen? I have been looking at the chat. Itachi Shahada time or would Shahada? Does he want to take the Shahada or? Okay, well, he has to come on TikTok. He has to be on TikTok for him to do it. I don't have StreamYard. Or it's not on right now. That's why. Hello? I thought he said he already took the Shahada. I have not, but I can do it on air. Oh, okay. Yeah, Orwood, all you have to do, just, come to TikTok. You have to come to TikTok. Yeah, it's on YouTube. There's somebody on YouTube saying they wanted to leave Christianity and become Muslim. Let me see. I don't think he's in the YouTube chat anymore, though. Yeah, he's not here anymore. He's not watching. I guess maybe tomorrow then. He's not in the live anymore, though. I'm not sure. I don't think he's trolling because he sent a super chat. Maybe it's this person, I'm not sure. Thank you for the glasses. I don't think it's this person. They're not loading in anyway. Yeah, he left. Okay, well, I'll call it here. No, I don't think he's gonna join. He's not watching the YouTube anymore either. Alright. I'm gonna call it here, guys. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you guys. I appreciate everybody for coming. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.